Manhood, brought you in part by Reboot and Solomon's Bespoke.
Welcome to Manhood, and once again, we have a big one. The topic today is misconceptions of men, not man, men. And there are many misconceptions out there, but today we want to be very specific. But before we go into it, I just want to clarify that manhood is all about is not just a safe space. And I know we've said it so many times, it's a safe space, but what it really is, it's a space for men to be seen. It's a space of validation, and it's a space of courage. And that's why we're very open and expressive here. And above all, the one thing that man always yearns is respect. And we aim to always respect not just the men here on this platform, but the men that we are speaking to. And we always aim to speak now on behalf of all men, because I think we've earned that after so many episodes and discussions with men. And today is no different. So misconceptions of men. To my right, Johanse IODK Behavior Change Consultant, Dinesh Rambally. Dinesh Rambally, Pundit, and a member of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha. And to his right, Niall McNish, producer, and his own terminology, provocateur, vibes God. So we want to get straight into it as we talk about misconceptions of men. And we're really happy to have you, Dinesh, because it really is going to give us an insight from your background. It's not just as an Indian man, of course, but a pundit, to really have that understanding. As we talk about misconceptions of men, we want to really get granular, because there's so many misconceptions all around. And I would know from my own background what people misconceive about, I don't know, a red man, for example. And
Quintessential,
as some may say. I don't know why you're smiling,
because I have plenty to say, so
right.
I'm waiting till you finish.
So one of the things we don't ever do on this show, and I know people have seen our banter back and forth, is it's not a space of judgment either. The only thing I may do from time to time is judge maybe Johanse's attire. But today he's looking dapper. So
I'm proud of him.
Yeah, we good to go. So Dinesh, misconceptions of men in general. What are some of the things, Trini man, Caribbean man, international man?
Robert, let me start off. Gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity to be on the program. Getting into the topic is one thing, but I have to say that being on set is a pleasure. Looking on the other side of the screen, which I have been doing for some time, this is a very good program. So, Robert, I want to commend you. I want to commend your colleagues on this program. The last one I looked at, it was very vibrant. Skinny Fabulous, of course, concluding with going off on song and chorus, everything with it. So I think that it is a very good program. I think people need this kind of discussion, because sometimes you don't realize yourself as an individual. You may be stereotyping matters. You may be thinking things one way, but you're not seeing the other side of it. You're not understanding the perspectives that are, really intertwining with each other. So I think this is a really good program. So I leave that there. Thank you for, allowing me to be here.
Will you be giving us a song at the end? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you're asking for?
You can never tell, Robert. You can never tell.
I mean, it's a, as I said, it's not just a safe space, but it's a space to be seen.
But on my way here this morning, I'm thinking to myself, this is the middle of the dry season, but it's a rainy morning. So you can never tell if we should really avoid that song at the end, right?
I like that.
But misconception of men, I think it is a very, it is not controversial, it's a sensitive topic. But important nonetheless. And I really think that if we have to talk about misconceptions of men, I would start generally. I think that Trini men, they are not equated in terms of their capability of understanding, interacting with the other sex, right? Females. I think they are really underestimated in terms of what they bring forward. I see a lot of men at home. They are, whether you want to call them house husbands, whether you just want to call them daddies, but I see a lot of men really sacrificing to ensure that the family unit, and of course we don't define family unit just yet, Doc, but I'm saying that that family unit, whatever it may be, just father and child, or whether it be properly, father, mother, and children, they really, there's a lot of sacrifice that really takes place in the home. And men are easily misconstrued, or they are simply labeled as though they don't care to participate in matters at home. They are unable to provide the support for women. They are unable to understand things beyond a certain depth, right? And therefore you think, well, they don't care. It's easy for people to think to themselves that, look, he doesn't care. He's a man. He doesn't care. He's a man. He will not understand. He's a man. What do you expect? So you see this really translating, but I think that is how men are seriously misconstrued, because I really see, even this program, I mean, the concept of this program shows that men are able to discuss in a very frank and honest way what, is really playing in their minds, how they perceive things, and they even going further to identify what they may think are their own shortcomings. So I think that to start with, I would say that generally men, they are seriously misconstrued and underestimated. That is where I would want to start the discussion.
So I'm happy that you've watched a couple episodes, so that you're feeling more confident sitting there, because you're saying that in the first segment, so we don't know what's to come in the second or third segment. But one thing is, you are right, Dinesh, is that we always maintain that level of respect. A true man and a real man always maintains that level of respect, and that respect doesn't just come from something that's learned. It's something that is understood. That one thing a man desires, a woman desires to know that she's enough and loved, and a man ultimately wants to be respected. And many times you find that men are disrespecting one another because they've not fully taken on the fact that if I must give what I expect, and I give the same levels that I expect. I expect myself, and I offer myself. So therefore, on this particular platform, we always aim to do that, to be real men, at least at this point, where we're respecting one another. Sometimes it's a lot harder than other times, because you might just want to throw this mic away and.
Gotcha. But fundamentally, though, I think that same word respect, right? A lot of the times men perceive that they're being disrespected, right?
Agreed. And
I think that's what, if you're going back to, misconceptions, I think a lot of the time, and it's just, we just never got educated on how to not take things so seriously. A lot of the times, I feel, especially Trinidadians, we hot to temper. For men, I find we don't actually cater to our feminine side, which a lot of men would consider not being a real man. Oh, he too sensitive.
Really,
that's not a real man.
Not cater to the sensitive man. You say that men, and even Robert says, sometimes fly off the handle and want to react. Isn't that tapping into your feminine side? Isn't that tapping into your emotions? Because if you can't even manage your emotions, right? And the conception or misconception of women are emotional. So then if you're saying that men are emotional, right? Trini men, then we actually tapping into the feminine side, and quite possibly maybe that is the problem.
So okay. I want just to clarify, because again, this is a big topic, and I want to make sure, because these are topics, like tributaries that we could branch off all over the place. But it is a good point to raise now, because just to clarify, when I say it's not men in general, a lot of times knowledge is power, and the lack of understanding leads to someone being perceiving disrespect, right? Because, say for example, if the language that I'm using might be one that you're not understanding the words or the vernacular or any presence in what I'm trying to say, or my body language, you may, in your lack of understanding where I'm coming from, perceive it as disrespect and then react accordingly, right? The other thing that I want to mention, as you spoke about feminine, it was actually a discussion I had up to yesterday, and I was trying to give some insight based on even a book launch that I went to. We use the words masculine and feminine, and because of the narrative that has been provided for years and years and years, we put it down to masculine being male and feminine being female, when it's traits. So man, in the oneness, in the balance, created from a man and a woman, right? Created from a man and a woman. So you have
That is if you're going
both.
from biblical. That's if you're going from the Bible. Remember, there are differentiation stories. And I'm putting it that way because we go in with conceptions and
A mother and a father don't
misconceptions.
create a human. I just asking. So it's the same man as in male, female creating a human, right? So whether you're a boy or a girl, you were created from a male and a female,
Gotcha.
a double X and a XY chromosome, right? So if I'm going from that position, you have both masculine and feminine within you. It is just a matter of masculine, the traits that would be
Considered
attributed
masculine.
and considered masculine have somehow, based on, we talk about maybe Homo sapien background of the hunter, and then you come to the nurturer, may come from a perspective that the masculine side of you is X, and the nurturing, softer, emotional side of you is now feminine. But because of a narrative that was painted and portrayed and discussed on many times, it seems as if somehow when we talk about the feminine side, we're talking about almost a weaker side of a man.
Right.
And that also triggers women, rightfully so, because it's not a weaker side, it's a side of you that is now being categorized by masculine or feminine. So I just wanted to make sure that we, in our discussion here today, it's a wider discussion, yes, but in our discussion here today about those misconceptions that it's not a weaker side or it's not a female side or that we're portraying, it's simply there are two sides to us.
So then can we unpack the narrative that you said was built for us? So I would always say, being a Afro-Trini, right? My narrative may have been very different. That same narrative that you're talking about may be very different from how Dinesh was raised and brought up. And then again, now the labels of what a man is, we could have two different representations of what manhood means, especially in Trinidad and Tobago.
Absolutely. So Dinesh, like, one of the reasons when we had our discussion, and we spoke about coming on the show, was that misconception or that, and what we want today is more clarity as to the misconceptions, not just of men, because we can have that general discussion, but misconceptions of an Indian man, misconceptions of a Hindu man,
Yes.
as we don't do, that we can delve, more into, maybe in this particular instance, one of a religious background because of Hinduism, what really it means and what it's been now misconceived to be, and so that's maybe something that we can certainly explore.
I certainly appreciate that. I mean, moving away from, just men in general. If I am to really speak now, and I'm thinking of Hindu / East Indian. One is just a subset, I suppose you could say, right? One a subset of the other, but Hindu / East Indian man. To me, a misconception. I mean, in any society, we would say, and I suppose Doctor could, basically give us more details on this, right? But your identity, we would normally say, and we do believe this, that our culture is really our identity. And if you are to look at a reflection of what your image, sometimes you could turn to music, right? When you turn to music that emanates, or it goes along with the culture, this is what you would use to really identify people, and it shapes, it is an image that is presented of you. And this is something that I think is troubling, and it's a misconception, and as we get into the discussion, I'll say why. You have chutney music, you have chutney soca. Sometimes I think the chutney soca is more, to me personally, palatable than the chutney, right? Simplicity. And what is wrong with it is that what you see is that the lyrics, one, but two, the lyrics married with the videos, right, Robert? When you see the videos that go with these songs, right?
Why is there wrong? Why is there something wrong with it? Why is it
No, let's discuss it first, right? Why? So when you see these videos, right, and as I said, the lyrics and what accompanies the visual, you basically see everything about East Indian men, Hindu men, somehow hinged on a bottle of rum or a bottle of alcohol. Or everything about that video is just, it is inherent in it is that you drink, it's rum till I die, right? Everything has to be pinned to that, right? And I think it creates this perception that That's all East Indian men do with your pastime, right? All they know is nothing is wrong with going to the beach, going to the river, getting together as a group and saying, look, we'll have a couple beers and whatever. I might be a Hindu priest, so I will not participate in that aspect of it.
Right.
But certainly nothing is wrong with getting together with a group of men and we say, okay, we're going to have we're going to knock a few glasses, whatever it is. But in this particular case, it is the lyrics and the visual that goes with it. It's as though that's all they do morning, noon, and night. It's like I go, I clock in for work, but before my time, I clock out and I'm down in the rum shop. I'm heading up to the river.
I'm only laughing because it's such a typical, it's
The typical cliche is the word that you wanna use.
cliche. Yes, it is.
But it's a
thank you.
serious misconception, Robert. So, I mean, however we look at it, we could laugh at it and stuff, right? Because, I mean, some of these videos, you start off by smiling, right? When you look at the YouTube videos and stuff, you start smiling. But when you really get into the lyrics and you look at it in completion, right? The full span of the video, you said, no, this something has to be, it is really painting a picture which is not something that you would associate, with men and Hindu men.
I don't think you could help that, because I think it is a level of emotional and even intellectual maturity. Because if I see a video portraying one race in one way, and I think as an individual, male or female, that is all this race is about, then there's a lower level, and I maybe sounding judgmental, but then your emotional intelligence not fully developed. Now, I know everybody's at different stages of emotional development, but what you're saying there, because the opposite to that, there's no way, maybe I could be wrong, but I think there's no way to fully portray the latitude of any culture or any one person. So if I was to say I want to make videos or documentaries or whatever on the East Indian male person, that could take forever because there are so many facets of it. So I think I understand the misconceptions and we go into dealing with it, but I think even those viewing, understanding that what you see, one thing you see, even though you see it all year long, I'll just give an example.
Yes.
Could no way reflect the latitude, the intricacies of the dynamics of any culture.
Uh,
Yeah, but here where I feel that you're missing out though, right? And I know that we have to go to a break soon, but remember that young people, when you spoke about emotional maturity, there have a lot of young people who still being programmed into the narrative that we spoke about, and it comes from, the generation above, right? So that emotional immaturity that is being consumed, I could see how the narrative of seeing this particular style of visuals with music could affect the younger generation. And that applies to the Afro Trinidad too, because we have some videos that I love the music, but if you really just look at the videos over and over, it sends a message that is not, and it could be misconstrued differently. But we'll get more back to that after the break. This is my head.
Welcome back. You are looking at Manhood. I am Dinesh Rambally, and of course, we are discussing misconceptions of men. Niall, I know we sort of ended temporarily, but we ended on you making the point that, we have to look at what is prevailing on the minds of possibly the youths,
Especially
what is
the
out there, especially the youths. So, let's get the discussion, if you want to build on that a little.
Sure. Well, I'll say to just go back to the point, because you raise a very valid point in terms of having this narrative, right? I love the word narrative as Robert used it, that has been being portrayed, and we're talking about misconceptions. Now, after Johan said, you came with, it was emotionally immature, if it is that you think
level
that,
of emotional intelligence.
and back to the point where the people that most susceptible of that are the younger generation. So I understand the point that is being made where Rum Till I Die can't be every chutney soca song. You understand? I want to hear what other parts of, especially Indo Trinidadians, right? Where else? Like, was a family structure like? Because I don't have any. I'll be the first one to say I don't have much or many Indian friends. Like I don't interact with many. I don't know. You're literally the first Hindu I am actually in close proximity to that I could have and ask questions. I have a ton of questions for you, right? Like, what would be the most or the biggest misconception specifically to the Hindu faith that you believe right now?
Well, I think if we use that same example, whilst I accept that the mature thing to do, or it would not be the prudent for a person to just formulate, look, this is the image based on a video. Just to say that, we're talking about, you spoke about the youths and what is in their minds. It's a known phenomenon that a lot of our young people, certainly from the latter part of the 1990s, right, early 2000s, they started to live in a different environment. Mm-hmm. We have seen it come home to roost when it was the COVID pandemic, right? Everybody just went totally virtual. So if you're living most of your life and your time on a screen, and it's like you're in this virtual environment, you are absorbing what is there. And local culture, these are the images that are being projected at you, right, in quick succession, every year, whole year round, right? This is what you're drinking rum, you're liming. This is what the East Indian Hindu does with his pastime. This is his lifestyle. So it's really not something that I would want that any person goes away thinking, well, this is what their culture is about. Because to me, this is what they do. Also with that, when we talk about culture, identity, they are also using as part of the chatti music, the traditional instruments. So if you see they playing dolak by the river, and it's a dantal, right? This is the metal, right? The two pieces of metal that they hit together.
I like any
right?
words. I like any words.
So you have a dolak, a dantal, harmonium as well, right? Or organ. And these are the traditional instruments, and everything is in a part of that video. You could easily ascribe your identity to something like that. And I just want to make it clear. That's why I say it's a misconception. East Indians, Hindus. Another thing is that, I mean, in my mind, let's move away from that. Let's look at what is being imported on the screens. So, Robert, I mean, I on CNC3, I think there's a not Hindu, but a proper Indian, like imported out of India, this production of where you have a Indian soap. Mm-hmm. And this Indian soap now, I mean, I don't look at it in entirety, right? But when you look at this thing, it's like it's just bacchanal from beginning to end, right? From the word go, it's just bacchanal, right? So
you missed a couple episodes, is what you're really saying.
So this young female gets married into this family, and she goes there, and it's like from the minute she enters the home, right? And what amazes me is how quick. I don't know if your production could do this, right? It's like you see this quick flashes of the screen, it's just going around, and like they do this special effects is like boom, 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 right? So from the time the daughter-in-law enters the home, it's like you see the mother-in-law watch the daughter-in-law, doom, 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 right? It's like, hey, bacchanal, right? Yeah. It's like you can understand.
Theatrics.
I know that's an Indian thing, but because it has soaps in every race, I think bacchanal like that is a soap opera thing, right?
It's a way of producing it to invoke a certain level of emotion and anticipation and anxiety, or all the various depends on what you're trying to achieve. And I wanted to get back to that point, but just because I don't want to go too far off the fact that when we talk about rum, a lot of times misconceptions are focused on. In this case, we're talking specifically, you're referring to Indian men, or even in certain cases, Hinduism, because what you asked was misconceptions with regard to that. Mm-hmm. But one, we have to look at, and that's why I'm trying to bring it really to Trinidad and Tobago, because we are culture of what you're drinking. And so when things, even like the soap or these videos are developed, it's developed out of research to see what is palatable, what is going to sell. In other words, like you see many cases, sex sells, alcohol, all of these different things. When a party is being promoted, what is going to sell? And so the perception, and sometimes perception is fact, is also rooted in maybe even a narrative that the younger generation isn't aware that they're portraying, because when it works for you, you're happy about it, and when it doesn't is when you're critical about it. So in many ways, even the persons that are singing the Rum Till I Die and all of these other things, they themselves, coming from a certain origin, are the ones that are pushing it. So to the persons that are looking on and looking and saying, okay, well, he is quote unquote one of us, that is the narrative that's being portrayed from within.
Yes.
And so, however, even though that's what's being portrayed, it is all of us. As in, drinking is a culture,
It's a
whether it
Trinidadian
be,
thing.
is a Trinbagonian thing. You know, it's punching, some people drinking, you know, other people maybe consume a lot of wine, another person might consume a lot of champagne, or what's the other one, Prosecco. And it's just that rum, it just seems like the cool thing to do. It's like people love to say they smoke a weed. Rum, like, hey, we go into the rum and river. So what I would ask is, not only is it a Trinbagonian thing and not necessarily attributed to that as a misconception of sorts, but what would you, Dinesh, and not just from a religious background or in your capacity as a Hindu priest, because you of course would take a certain look or outlook or be disapproving of certain things, what would you say would be the Trinidadian Indian man that is a positive portrayal that should be out there?
So Robert, those two examples, not rehashing it, one is like, this is your pastime. And the other one, you know, the example of the soaps is as though, well, in the home, inherent in that bacchanal between a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law is as though the Hindu man is somehow a pipsqueak. He has no voice when it comes to his mother. He will not look after his wife. He will not put his wife first. He will not, you know, make sure that he secures something for his daughter or his son, his children. It's like this feeble, this recluse sometimes. He's not willing to be out there and somehow socializing with everyone in a way that is constructive in the society, whether it's a lime or whether it is part of being, you know, work professional, business-like. So this really and truly, when you look at the Hindu man, the positive outlook, which I think it is, and I'm convinced in my own mind and my experience, is what prevails in the society, is that you have Hindu men who, from a little child, they would imbibe teachings of scriptures. So you would see that they have role models like Lord Ram, right? Most people, Trinidadians, would know the Ramayana or know of it as an epic, right? But this is a scripture where you have till today archaeological remains of the events that, you know, have been codified in the Ramayana epic, right? So that scripture, I mean, Lord Ram is described as the ideal man, not just because of ideology, but how he taught man to live. So this is God, the highest form of God, coming and you know, incarnating as a man, to live as a man, to show how
Which
man,
is what? Which is what? What is the highest ideal of a man?
So the highest ideals of man, how he should live, you know, whether it be a householder. So when Lord Ram came, it is broken up into stages. The first stage of life, he teaches it as what we say a brahmachari, which is the student life. So you would see that he showed how you should live as a child growing up and as a student. And then he goes into the householder life when he becomes married. And then you would see that on the householder life now, this is where really you could say that he exemplifies what a man should be. His wife, right, who is a form of the goddess, right, the feminine aspect of God, is kidnapped by an evil person. And this is where now you would see that he lives as man, crying as a mortal, in search of his wife, waging war, forming alliances with people, different races, different cultures, forming alliances with them, and then having formed that alliance, going and calling out the evil side now and saying, well, okay, I have come to wage war, defeating the you know, that evil king and also that clan, if you want to call it, that army. And then, you know, having won your wife back now, this is where he comes back now and he moves on to another stage of life, having accepted kingship, right? He is now the king in his kingdom. His wife is properly on the throne with him, and then he moves on now to teach other aspects. So this is really how Hindus are brought up to live and pattern themselves. Now,
In Trinidad?
in Trinidad, yes. And that really, you see, like I could make it more along the lines of, well, even
Well,
with
you mentioned man, and I just want to clarify as you're going through this learning and teaching moment. You know, as we talk about, is it Brahman, where Hinduism believes that man is the soul,
yes,
and the body and mind are instruments to seek experience, right? So help me understand the two that merge in terms of a conception of what man is and how that then comes across to, because man is both men and women, and man, and as you said about the ideal man. I just want the clarification of those two.
So Hinduism is you know, we say it is a religion, right? Within Hinduism, you have different belief systems, right? So what most men, right, most Hindus in Trinidad practice is Sanatan Dharma.
Which is eternal truth.
Is eternal truth, right? And in this eternal truth, what we believe is that the soul is Brahman, and the super soul, that is the English term, but the super soul now in Sanskrit, we would say that is the Para Brahman, right? So that Para Brahman is that is really the highest divinity. So there is really no separation between Brahman, this soul, and that super soul, that being the highest divinity, God. And therefore, what Sanatan Dharma is everything that now facilitates this soul, your soul, merging back to the super soul. That is really what Sanatan Dharma is.
So
So that entirety, all the scriptures, everything is aimed at really making sure that the way you live, you're bound by duty. There's a lot of emphasis on duty. Even the scripture, the Ramayana, shows that Lord Ram lived according to what his duties demanded. And so he shows as a man that whilst he may weep, he will do things as a mortal. He still is bound by duty, and that duty is it is like the bedrock now of Sanatan Dharma.
So I don't know if you get in this, and I want you to say what you have to say, you answer, but just to say that it feels almost as if hearing this, like the soaps have taken almost like a satire on this to show almost a subservient side that's now being portrayed as some level of weakness, or men not wanting to go out and or running around in the household. I mean, I haven't seen the soap. Clearly, you've seen.
Not to know, because there's a saying, art imitates life, and what you're saying there is that you see this portrayal that you see here. Personally, I have never seen that. Right, I've read it, right, and even speaking to one or two people in Hinduism itself, I've heard it. But the general, and I wouldn't say narrative now, right? I'll go maybe the general sentiment, and I can tell you both from a professional and personal experience. One is, you see, when you use the word and Sanatan Dharma.
Mahasabha. Okay, good.
Right. Is that, and I'll tell you the narrative. So we're talking about narrative from a young and an undeveloped brain. When I heard that growing up, what I heard is racist, right? That the Hindu men, a part of this, are racist. That's what I heard. Now, this is not my experience, but this is what I heard as a narrative I heard. Then also, so if I didn't experience it firsthand, I would think that is the truth. Then also about the weakness and the timidness of Indian men. This is actually something that came up in a lot of my clientele dealing with men of East Indian race. That some of them feel this way, right? They feel the weakness, and then also they are treated this way. And then usually when I see a trend, I usually start asking questions and asking around. So I even started speaking to men of other races, what their thought about East Indian. This is Trinidad alone we're speaking about. And then asking some of the women, both East Indian women and Afro-Trinidadian women. And they all share the same sentiment, that the Indian man, whether they think he is like that or it is portrayed like that, they both think that. And even some Indian men don't feel themselves in that assertive manner as men of other races. So I'm saying that because it could be a misconception, but there's also something occurring there in terms of, when I say art imitate life, there's something also occurring. We're going Trinidadian, Indo-Trinidadian men that is portrayed in a weak manner.
So Robert, I just want to say that I'm glad you raised that point because I maintain this is a misconception. I mean, a lot of Hindu children growing up into young men, they are engaged in, and I don't think it's limited to Hindus. I think it's a phenomenon across the board where you'll see them getting very physical, whereas before some homes would maintain that, look, you had to bust the books, right? This is what you have to do if you want to get ahead. A lot of homes, and not just Hindu homes or East Indian homes, what you're saying is that they understand that they have to invest now in becoming a well-rounded individual. So you see them in sports and things like that. But to answer what you would have mentioned, like timid and some feedback that, racist and some of the, if I may say, let's use the topic label today, misconception. I mean, every year in this country, we know what Diwali is. Everybody knows what Diwali is. When you look at Diwali...
Nah, we don't know what Diwali is. We know it's a holiday.
We know it's a holiday, all right.
We might know exactly
Festival
what
of
it
Lights.
is.
The Festival
Right.
of Lights, right? But, I mean, throughout certain parts of Trinidad, right? Central and South predominantly. Takes place in the East as well. You would have what is called Rambally. And that is a huge cultural. I mean, if you fly in international airlines and whatever, Caribbean Airlines for sure, you would see that when you take out the magazine and you're flying on the airplane, you take out the magazine, Rambally features in the first few pages, right? Because that is a big item. Yes, being sold as part of tourism, but it is a real part of our culture. Rambally enacts this whole, in a summary fashion, but enacts what the Ramayana is, where good overcomes evil. Yes, that is the easy label to attach. But really it shows a man who dispossessed of all of luxuries, and now having lost his wife, is able to fight. And I mean, he's not fighting any ordinary person. In the epic, he's fighting one of the greatest demons who was able to even defeat some of the gods and demigods. And this is as a man, and he wages that war and he wins back his wife and he reestablishes what is righteousness. So men like myself, let me use me as an example, right? May not be the best example, but I'm using it as an example. One of the other scriptures that exist, which would have come in the age after the Ramayana, again, you have in India and other parts of the world, archaeological remains to show that what was codified actually took place. So like Ramayana, the classic is where NASA was able to show the structure that runs from Lanka, right, Sri Lanka, to India. So that is there, that is archaeological remains, right? To show that when the Ramayana said that this bridge was built by Vanars, right, which people will loosely say is monkeys, but it's a race, Vanars, and man coming together, that actually took place, right? In the scripture which comes in at the age after, we say is the Mahabharata, the Great War. In that one now, I mean, I patterned myself from a little boy after what we call the great grandsire. His name is Bhishma. I even named my son Bhishma, right? Because I'm so enthralled by this character. This is a man who promised as a little boy in order to defend his father's honor, to defend his stepmother's honor, that he would never ascend the throne, right? He would never take, the role of becoming a king. Defended the kingdom at the cost of his own death. And he was so powerful, right? The belief was that every day in that war, the war lasted 18 days, he killed at least 10,000 men a day. Now, that's sounding real crazy, but when you look at the population in India nowadays of 1 point whatever billion, you could imagine that these armies, and the battlefield is still there for people to go and see. I mean, they claim things cannot grow there properly and stuff because of that great war. It shows that people, the Hindu, the East Indian man is able to identify with exactly what we say was brought with indentureship, the preservation of these scriptures, these epics, and they identify with these characters because it is largely religious now. This is where the religion is inculcated within. And they grow up with the belief system that, look, I could be like this individual. And you see a lot of persons, their lives are patterned. And I think, not only Hindus, I think you still have men as a whole who, whether they pattern their lives after Jesus or one of the prophets or, all of these things, even Muslims, right? They so identify themselves with these, I don't want to use with characters, but with these personalities, these personifications, that it is really deep. It is ingrained in them. So when you see sometime, I used to wear a particular cap, right? When you see a parliamentarian jump up and he quote a scriptural verse and he says, you know, behold, and he starts off like that. He's digging really deep down because this is his belief.
This is belief.
And that's why I think the misconception comes with particularly Hindus, that they have such a large, it's a treasure of scriptural references. And it's not just a compilement of allegories. This is real things that they believe. This is their belief system, and this is really their strength. So that's why I say I start off with one example being like an outdoor pastime which seems to dominate, you know, on the airwaves, right? And the other one being within the home.
This rum, Dinesh, this rum that we keep coming back to talk to. Now we got to go to a break, but you mentioned things like indentureship and people beliefs, and I'm glad you didn't go down a political road, because that's one thing that we always want to make sure that we keep in the show. We know that one thing with Trinidad and Tobago is a lot of times, and it probably is in its own renditions and manifestations and environments all over the world. Everyone has their version of tribal politics, right? But it's really important that we remember above all that this is our rock and we're Trinbagonian, no matter color, creed, race, or belief or class. So we take a break with that one, and when we come back, of course, we'll do more of a Q&A with Niall McNish.
Welcome back to Manhood. We're discussing the misconceptions of men. And I'm really happy to have Dinesh here today to bring a different diversity, because it is very interesting. Every time we have this and we ask, what is a man? We get different definitions, different reactions. And even for me, and I don't know if I could speak for everybody else too, so every time we redefine what is a man. And when we talk about misconceptions, I know sometimes, and especially, and I will boldly say this, is that I think East Indian male relations between Afro-Trinidadian male relations in Trinidad and Tobago sometimes have the misconception that it can't work this way, or it don't happen as common as it does. But one of my real good friends, right, and that I grew up with is East Indian, and I've seen it that way because I appreciate just learning. And we're going into a segment now where I know Niall have a lot of questions in terms of learning, but I'm really grateful to have you here.
Same. And well, again, I know that they put money spot in the fact that I had a lot of questions. I told them I had a lot of questions.
I have questions, so if you lack
the reason why I'm putting it to Niall is because, I mean, he is titled a provocateur, and we want to make sure that there are persons probably looking on at this episode right now, or screaming at the screen, ask him about this now, and coming from a position of, one, some people want enlightenment, some people generally want to get that knowledge, and the topic is misconceptions of men. But there's certain people that are still in a position and a place of judgment, and are asking the question to see, hey, how do you respond? Because, and I use the word men, but a real man doesn't want to see somebody fall. You know, a rising tide raises all ships. And that's what we're intending here to do. So, but in order to still answer those questions that they may have from whatever position they are, and I use it when it's coming from a negative position, it's a position of smallness. So you've not been enlightened as yet. And I'm hoping that through Niall's questions and questions that we all may have, and your insight, not just as Dinesh Rambally, as a man, but also as a Pundit and a member of the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha, that you can enlighten us to, when you know better, you do better, and you are better. So through those questions, like I said, we'll
well, my first one off the bat, right? I'm very interested in the Hindu religion itself, right? Can anyone join your religion? The same way I could become or be baptized as a Catholic tomorrow. Can I just choose to become a Hindu?
Yeah, anyone can be a Hindu. You see, Sanatan Dharma, as I said earlier, is one, we say religion, but this is really a way of life, right? And it is open to anyone. And again, Sanatan Dharma is everything you can possibly conceive and much more, that is aimed at this soul merging and becoming one with the highest divinity. I mean, some religions would say, show me the light. right? That's what they're in search of. I mean, this is what it is. You really want to merge back with God. What I know we practice, and I think I speak confidently of most Hindus in Trinidad. There is something that, I mean, people could even Google it easily, right? Vasudevam Kutumbakam. It means the entire globe is one family. So to be a Hindu is actually to not only respect the ways of Hinduism, it is actually to respect those, like if you belong to Christianity, it also means that, you know, Christianity, Islam, you know, Shouter, Baptist, whichever one, right, that you belong to and you believe in. Vasudevam Kutumbakam, we are one family. It means that there's one God, one ultimate divinity, but different families of, you know, belief. So this is what that believes, and that is what it means, and that is what we believe. So anyone can ascribe to be a Hindu. They can be, in fact, a Hindu.
And just to touch on what Niall said, and for him to go back, because it is your Q&A for at this point, it's what about the race part of it? Because
literally, it's about to be my next question. Because the common misconception is, I was told that no, you could only be born a Hindu. You can't become one. So then my very next follow-up question would be, what would that look like? And of course, the elephant in the room, as a black man entering, I'm assuming, a temple. I don't know what the name is. I don't know if I'm using the right name.
Yeah, temple, mandir.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. And how would I be, you know, taken in? And of course, the follow-up to that would be, you know, let's just say I want to have a wife from your religion. And I know there's a cliche statement that is usually said that, you know, East Indian man could be a friend, but he'll never let you marry their daughter. I want to know, how true is that? And, you know, because again, misconceptions, we're trying to clear it up. Right?
So we have, I mean, we have inherited some shackles. That is a given. I have seen myself, and I have invited a lot of my friends who are not Hindus and they are not Indian, right? They are not of Indian descent, to come to temple, and they have taken up the offer, right? The invitation. Coming to temples, they I don't know. I'm not saying that it does not exist, because you do have some individuals who may, because of their own upbringing, they are not open-minded.
And it's very important that we use that term, their own upbringing and their own societal influences that may cause, like, even through the caste system.
So what they do, I mean, I have seen where people are welcomed. I have seen it. Your place of worship is open to everyone. And I have seen, even in the Sanatana Dharma Mahasabha, where we have honored persons in our temples who are not of Indian origin, right? We have had, and not because they may be ambassadors or anything like that. We have had ordinary persons, and you know, just normal citizens, and they come to the temple. So that is that aspect of it. As I say, we have inherited some shackles. And you know, I think as a country we are moving forward, but where people understand that there may have been an origin for a particular belief or the origin of a particular societal norm. But I think those things have really, you could see that it has largely dissipated. This whole notion about, well, you know, an East Indian man will not allow his daughter to marry another race, Negro, otherwise, right? I mean, that does exist, right? For me to say it doesn't exist would be an untruth. This program is not meant for that, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate
That is something that does exist. I don't have anything empirical to say whether it's 50% of the population, whether it's 10%. What I do know is that is something that is dissipating, because I myself, even within my own family, I have seen where persons, and I'm talking about children of Hindu priests, because my family on both sides, my mother and my father's side, predominantly they are Pundits, right? The males are Pundits. And I have seen where they have married outside of caste and outside of race as well.
Why do you think it dissipated?
Because I think what happens is that you remember, if I could only imagine that if I was on that boat, right, coming hundreds of years ago, and I showed up here, there's this natural inclination. It's new territory, I don't know Robert, I don't know you, I don't know Niall, right? And when I show up, I said, look, you see this? I'll talk to them fellas and I'm out in the cane field, you know. But when I retire home, I keep to myself because I'm not sure of what you believe. You don't look like me. You don't speak like me. And therefore, I have to get to know you first. But I have seen that Trinidad and Tobago is really the ultimate melting pot, right? Where you can see everybody really coming in on board. For those who don't, you all may not know this, but I mean the majority of the East Indian population and certainly Hindu population will know that I was the right hand for the late Satma Raj for many years, And I could have seen that, you know, what was deemed to be necessary to lead, right? And I want to use the word loosely, lead their flock, is something that over a period of time they themselves started to open up. And therefore they understood that, look, this is really a ideal melting pot and everybody's coming together.
Dinesh, I love that you say that, because I think, you see, that oneness, whether we want to go any religion, various religions or ways of life speak about oneness. We even hear, you know, the universe as one. We all are one. I think, this is my opinion, I think inevitably that's where we will go, you know. We could fight it and talk about separation and this one bad and this one bad, but eventually in Trinidad we could try to segregate each other and this race thing and this with whatever. But eventually we have no choice but to be one, you know, because it is inevitable, because life and Trinidad, and I like that you say it and we know it, Trinidad itself is an example of the beauty of everything mixing and becoming one, and none of the separation. So once you say it, what you said there, I'm real happy, because even though we highlighting the misconceptions, and notice when I highlight about the racism, remember I said I never experienced it.
Okay.
I hear it all the time, but I've never experienced it, because I think speaking about the misconceptions is powerful, because instead of having the elephant in the room, as you said, we just get this thing out of the way now, so that we could get down to understanding each other as individuals, understanding each other as men, and then let me just move forward. So you can continue the question.
I want to go into, because I kind of muttered it a bit with regards to caste. So caste, where it derives from, is based on certain surnames. Surnames may mean certain things, whether it be a blacksmith, whether it be somebody in royalty. But I think in Trinidad and Tobago, I don't think, and again, I would like the enlightenment on this, that maybe the older generation, but certainly the 60 and younger generation may not be looking at caste as it is historically, and looking more at class in Trinidad and Tobago. And that's how it may, in terms of someone, a parent may look at someone else asking themselves, what class are you from? Like, are you a...
I agree, because I have experienced that personally, even from young, coming up, in terms of interacting and even observing. I can't say it's purely Hindu, because I don't know if they were Hindu, but seeing East Indian, even East Indian tell me about their views on looking at somebody of their own race as a lower class or higher caste. Sorry, I mean, we could use that interchangeably based on what you're saying. And even me, curious, even asking, well, how would you know now, right? And sometimes not even getting specific answers versus just a kind of sentiment or even a misconception. So that's something, maybe even if we could address that understanding even amongst East Indian men or East Indian or Hindus in the country, relating to each other based on their view of each other as a higher or lower caste.
So if I was to take if I was to measure, right, we putting a point system, how controversial race is, right? Racism, and it should not be controversial. It just should not exist. We accept that. But if I was to put that on a marker, that would, let's say it's out 0 out of 10. That's 10. I want to tell you, within the East Indian population, caste is ranking 10 as well, right? Okay. So that is something, and because you have in this caste system, and I'm glad you, Robert, you said earlier in introducing this part of the discussion, the class and caste, because that's exactly what happened in India. Remember, for East Indian population here, we have taken a lot of what has come from India, right? That's where our indentureship, our ancestry comes from. And that is exactly what took place. The British, right, would have taken rulership of India. And in order to basically divide and rule, what they did was they took what was the caste system, and I'll come to what the caste system should be, right, properly. They took the caste system and they turned it into class. So you have different levels now. So you would have Brahmin, Kshatriya, so the Brahmin are the custodians of the scriptures. Okay. They are ultimately the ones who you would say they are the teachers, right, of Hinduism and other things as well. So you would say that they are the Brahmins. The Kshatriyas are the kings. They are the ones who are like the warriors. They are the ones who establish righteousness. So when you see, like, as we would say, the gangs come out and they're taking over, the Kshatriyas were the one who had to protect the territory against that kind of let's say untoward or negativity in the society. And then you have Shudras, you have Vaishyas, you have whatever. They're like, sometimes when you look at the English translation of what these words mean in a Sanskrit dictionary, you would see servant, sometimes you would see they put tradesman, right, merchant, things like that. So you have business class, all of these things, right? I think what has happened is that it has totally been confused, because that is what man is good at. Not really saying men, right? But man is good at doing that. Confusing things, right?
So man, not just men, man.
Man, right? Man and woman, right?
Maybe if I get help, I know you maybe conflate might be because sometimes based on where you are or who are the holders of the knowledge, they shape it to be whatever they want. And I think maybe some of those people is what caused the misconception, because before, as you said, the rum songs, right? But you're using traditional, and I don't want to say religious because I don't know if that is correct, but traditional Indian or Hindu instruments, but using it now with the rum, right? Now, I can't tell them if that's right or wrong for them to do, but because it was done that way, it is now conflated or maybe even confused into being part of the culture.
Yes. Yeah. And you're right. I'm saying that, this caste and class has now been, and that's a good way of looking at it, right? And putting it conflated. It has been done over centuries. So it is going to take some time for people to really disabuse themselves of it. I could easily be accused, right? Because I come from a Pundit family that, well, he's one to talk. Why he talking? He's a Brahmin, right? He professes to be a Brahmin, whatever it is. But Gandhi had actually dealt with this, Mahatma Gandhi. And he said that what people are confusing in India at the time, he was saying that this whole system of caste was meant to define duties. It didn't mean that if you belonged, right, in the societal structure, that you belonged to one caste, that you couldn't do something that the other was doing. It didn't mean that. Okay. It didn't mean that one was superior to the other. It actually defined duties.
But human nature, Dinesh, like if I supported Manchester United, as everybody know I do, like it or lump it, if somebody else comes and we in a room and somebody's a Manchester United supporter, we're gonna go against whether it be in jest or in anger or in aggression, depends on the score. You tend to always go to team, and naturally people want to be part of a quote unquote gang and feel part of something. So by putting that out there, I think in the whole element of peace. The foresight at that point might have been that setting it up for but I don't want to go into that because again this is a longer conversation. I don't want to be accused of saying anything against anyone in particular, but we don't have much time. This is a very profound and very enlightening episode certainly, and I want to make sure Niall with certain questions that I'm sure persons want to get answered.
Well, just for the sake of time, the last question I found was big. What I wanted to ask is about child marriage, right? And you mentioned Mr. Maraj, right? And I remember I'll use the word scandal for the lack of a better word, when he was very adamant about, I can't remember, just before he passed, about wanting to reinstate or have child marriages at a particular age. I believe it was 13 at the time.
So-
And I no, to me, who
Yes.
don't understand or who don't, I would call myself a modern Western person. So that sounds very strange to me, right? So I don't know what would be the misconceptions or his beliefs or thoughts on that topic.
What I mean, I'm speaking from my own knowledge of that particular topic, right? So the law now is 18 and over, right? You can't marry below 18. That I'm talking about Trinidad. In America, certain states, I don't know if they have become universal in that law, that all states abide by it, but certainly up to a few years ago, they did not. You could have had under 18 being married and things like that. The law for, and I'm speaking for Hindus, I think actually for other faiths, the age was actually lower.
Okay.
So I don't want to misquote, but I think that whereas in the Hindu laws, but insofar as it pertains to Hindu marriages.
In Trinidad or universal?
No, in Trinidad. In Trinidad. It used to be where the male, you had to be 16 and over. So it was less than 18, but you had to be, for the male, 16 and over. And in the case of the female, you had to be 14 and over, with parental consent. So it couldn't be I use the word underage. It couldn't be a less than 18-year-old boy and a less than 18-year-old girl on their own getting together and getting married under law.
Okay.
It had to be with parental consent. Again, the girl, you have to be 14 and above. The boy, you have to be 16 and above. The law now is 18, full stop. Doesn't need parental consent.
Trinidad
In
or
Trinidad. In Trinidad.
Globally, okay.
No, in Trinidad. The move globally is to get everybody at that 18.
So what is it globally? What is it in India, say, for example?
I think India has gone 18, but again, there's so many states. I know it was like a United Nations thrust that you would go 18 being the minimum
Okay.
age. And there's benefit. We know the wisdom in that, right?
And it's accepted by the Hindu
It is
religion.
accepted, yes. Now, because the law was constructed the way it was, I recall, I just don't recall the name of the book now, but it was Michael Anthony who codified that in the days of the early indentureship, the average lifespan of the male was 33 or 31 or something like that, right? So I think at those early days, you could imagine that if your full span as a man, right, your mortal span is 33, when are you going to kick off, rearing children and all of these things? And your lifestyle is the key and feel, right? That's all you know. Woman, I think, was a little bit more than the male. So I will tell you, I think what Mr. Miraj's position was that don't just get rid of the law. Inform it with some kind of empirical evidence that you could show that, look, we should make the change, because his concern was that as it stands now, the parental consent is a check and balance. So it wasn't a case of where we are promoting child marriages. It was a case of, and he used the example of, suppose it's by accident. Don't deprive the two families of having the ability of coming together and saying, listen, you are at a young age as a boy, boy, and the female, you're at a young age. Finish your education. The two parental supports, the two families will come on board and they will support this within the structure of a marriage. Not out of marriage. Now, I could tell you, I think his main concern was that there was a broad brush. And if you know the individual, he didn't want no broad brushing of the Hindu community. And there was this sort of broad brush at the point in time of this debate, as though the Hindu population was promoting the child marriages. And I mean, you could imagine if you are the leader of an institution and you're a leader of a group of people, you don't want that. And as I said, there were reasons why people were marrying younger back then, but that is virtually non-existent now. Okay. I can't say it does not. I can't prove that it doesn't exist. But I could tell you, if you look at Mahasabha schools, right, the girl colleges and whatever, women are not getting married until they are fully professional, right? And I think there was this kind of movement that you don't want to encourage the children out of marriage, because that is something that they believed in. And,
so I just want to, based on something Niall brought up in the earlier segments, as we talk, and we brought up when we spoke about respect. And one of the things I was bringing up with regards to respect, a lot of times people feel disrespected because of lack of understanding. And in that lack of understanding, that can go well, not just for the persons who are now being enlightened as to that information that you've brought, but what about the persons even within the religion who are not enlightened and don't have that understanding of what you are now communicating with us, and as such, they're just going to say, hey, child marriage, this is the age, and therefore, instead of understanding what it was, where it came from, at, when someone died at 33 years old, now we're living to 80, 90, and I believe I even saw up until a couple days ago that someone died at 105 years old. And so the person who is not educated in that is simply being taught in the religion that you should get married at this age, or this is the age of marriage, and as a result, still continues with that tradition.
Well, but Robert, it is not a tradition to marry amongst the Hindu population to marry children young. It was not a tradition, right? It was a matter.
A necessity.
It was a necessity at a point in time.
Right.
So when the laws were sought to be amended, there was no objection per se to saying that, look, we use the 18 as the minimum, right? Moving forward, there was this avenue where if you were going to go below 18, 16 and 18 for the male, and 14 and 18 for the female, inform it with something empirical. In other words, is it that this thing is prevalent? If it is prevalent, we have a problem. If it is not prevalent, look at the cases where it is in fact happening. And if that be the case, do you now weigh that now, the fact that it is still happening, weigh it against whether or not it is something that the law still serves as a check and balance with the parental consent, or listen, we really need to get rid of it because it is a insidious evil, picking away. I have no doubt in some of the rural communities in our country, because I know of instances. I mean, we know that grooming takes place and what. These are really the unfortunate evils we have to contend with. If it is, you say 18, there's no aggression or pushback against 18. The thing is that you have to find, well, okay, if you are curing this insidious evil, do it properly. You have to inform yourself. And I think back then, I could tell you, I was involved in the debate within the Mahasabha. I could tell you their concern was that don't broad brush a whole population as though we are the perpetrators of child marriages.
So, and I want to, because we now get to that part of the show where we close on with nuggets and insight, and I want to say, I mean, I'm going to kick things off to say that, again, I want to echo the sentiments of my colleagues and my friends and the men on this show, where I'm really grateful for you coming on the show here today, because there's certain, again, having a lot of Indian and by religion Hindu friends, it's not something that even as men and women that you talk about often, because it's a respect for, okay, this is your religion, that's your religion, we are friends. It doesn't matter what religious background that you're coming from, we're friends for a particular reason. And so the insightful conversations may be few and far between. And having that specifically looked at here today was one that I feel not just more enlightened, but I feel better as a Trinbagonian. And the topic we started off discussing and come to conclusion with is the misconceptions of men. And as you mentioned, one of those, again, attributed to the Hindu religion might be weak men, child marriage, and all of these things that you realize have nothing to do with race, has nothing to do with religion. It's simply all men. It could be any race, it could be any religion. These attributes, and I use that word lightly, these definitions, these behaviors, the the grooming, and all these other things happen in all races, happen in all religions. And you see it. I mean, it's out there. We're in the advent of social media, so therefore, the moment it happens, whether it's real or fake, it's out there for everyone to see. So I appreciate that not only the background as to how it may have come about through the Hindu religion, but also for us to now get an awareness that, hey, it's not just this particular religion or race, it's everyone. in the positive and the negative. So I appreciate that, Dinesh. And my one message, apart from that enlightenment, that clarification, that wow moment in a very real and profound way, is simply to realize that this is our rock. Trinidad and Tobago is ours, and it's only ours. We are unique people in more ways than one, not just being one of the sexiest countries and of course the best accent in the world, one that not many can replicate, or if any at all. Many have tried, but few have succeeded. But to say that it doesn't matter color, creed, or race, we are one.
Twofold. One is that I encourage men out there that when we grow up, we have one conception of something, and to be open to new concepts, whether it is of masculinity, of race, of religion, whatever it is, because I think for us to navigate life healthily, we should be open to other concepts. And then two is that no matter what someone's misconception of you are, if you have and you're solid in the conception of yourself, that's the most important thing, because you can't stop people from misinterpreting you, from misunderstanding you. That's something that may happen with you for the rest of your life. But once you have a concept of yourself that you could hold on to, I think as a man, that's one of the most important things.
I think we have seen it said time and again, you be the change that you want to see in society. Robert, I just want to end on a positive note, that this is something that I have seen for myself, and it transcends religion, class, ethnicity. I have seen that, and I'm also a lawyer by profession, so I have seen, like, even in the most bitter moments where you have, men and women going through a divorce, you see people fighting and whatever, there's something that men hold on to. And I'm not saying it's limited to men. Women also do it. But to me, the positive in this is that you could see even in the most bitter moments, they say, but I want to ensure that our child is well taken care of. I want to ensure that my son is properly accommodated in school and whatever, my daughter. So it shows that the positive in society is that we all understand that we need to act and do things in a way that we are leaving something as a platform for those to come. And to me, that is one of our greatest strengths that I have been seeing, that despite everything, the war, the fights, the quarrel, the antagonism, whether it be on an individual level, community level, and even political level, to me, this is where we have to understand. I have seen that in Trinidad and Tobago. I think it's our greatest strength, that we know that we want to leave a better platform than that which we met. So I will end with that.
Okay, and for me, just to reiterate everything, it's a pleasure being able to ask you questions. And for those of you who don't have someone close to you to ask questions, to just to get more clarity, do some more research, and just know that some of the narratives and perceptions that you've had was given to you, and not necessarily what you actually believe about a situation and people. So that's mine.
So this is manhood. Dinesh, you leading us off with a song?
We get enough rain this
We had
morning.
rain this
Yeah,
morning,
we had rain this
Robert.
morning.
No. I feel I
We
should
had
break
rain,
to do that one.
so no song. Maybe the next time. So this has been manhood, misconceptions of men.
Manhood, brought you in part by Reboot and Solomon's Bespoke.